Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Norm.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Jen.
Hi, Jen Schachter.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. If you're watching this video, we may be a little bit sheepish because it is very early this morning, but we're making time to do the podcast. And Jen, last time you were here, you were visiting, but now you are a semi-permanent resident. Are you here?
Yeah, I've moved out to California. I made the big move.
San Francisco granted her residency.
Yes. Yes. No visas required.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. You were in Baltimore previously. Right?
Yeah, I've been in Baltimore for about 12 years. So it was almost like home, and this was a big move. So.
What made you want to move to San Francisco?
Well, I had a really great opportunity to work with this gentleman here on a number of different projects. And the timing was just right. And I've been coming out for, projects over the past several years. And this seemed like a good time to finally commit and be in San Francisco.
So we're here really early because we're in production. And today is a final build day before we head to a undisclosed location tomorrow to engage in some shenanigans.
That sounds like your life for the past 15 years, right?
Exactly.
Final build days upon final build days before shenanigans.
Precisely.
Yeah, we're so glad you're here, Jen. Every time you visited, the moment you leave, we talk to ourselves and go, we wish you were here permanently. And it is so delightful to have you here.
I'm really excited to be here.
So how are things going for both of you?
These days are long.
Yep.
We are running lean, but it is a phenomenal crew. We're getting tremendous amounts done. And there's so much I want to say, but I really can't say. We just have some amazing collaborators this week. Some extended members of the Tested family are on the show that I'm working on. All will be revealed soon. I turned in the final corrected copy of my book yesterday.
I want to hear a little bit about the process.
I mean, just so like all of these things we can't talk about.
Yeah.
but the book, I guess you can talk a little bit more about because, the title's out there, the cover's out there, people can pre-order it. But that process of going through and publishing a book.
Oh my God.
What is that like? Like,
I think
a lot of authors, right?
I think we should leave that discussion for another later podcast closer to the book.
Okay.
I'm still way too deep into the middle of it right now. Jen, I'm curious if there's anything about moving to San Francisco that you've discovered about San Francisco that you hadn't in previous just visits.
That's a hard question. I've been coming here for a long time, so I've extended family in the Bay Area, and I sort of fell in love with the city probably about 15 years ago. I looked at schools out here, and I ended up in Baltimore. But San Francisco has always had a special place in my heart. It's different knowing that I'm living here now. Like the perspective of being someplace when you're on vacation is totally different. You're out in a project, but now it's like, oh, this is my town. This is my neighborhood now. So I'm getting to see it through new eyes and just discover places that I hadn't seen before. And even honestly, just coming into the cave, I was looking around this morning and I was like, wow, is any of this stuff new or have I just not noticed it before? There's like so much stuff that to be discovered.
I wonder if there are filters we put over our experience depending upon how lasting that experience is perceived to be for us when we're taking something in. I wonder, like, I remember walking out of a hotel in 1988 on Gough and Lombard.
Okay.
The Marina Inn. That's the first place I stayed in San Francisco for my brother's wedding in 88. And I remember thinking, this is the most beautiful city in the world. And like Gough and Lombard is a shitty, terrible corner. I mean, that's okay. It's not a terrible corner, but it's not a great corner. It's not like anybody's taking pictures there and going, this is classic San Francisco. But it wasn't until I moved here that I really started to understand how beautiful this city is in so many layers.
Yeah. I've had, there's a place that my uncle took us to years ago, City Lights bookstore, which I love. And in the basement of that bookstore, there's a door in between shelves. So it's just bookshelves right up to the edge of this door. And the door is painted and it says, I am the door. And I loved that. And I went back home when I was probably like 16 or 17 and I painted it on my bedroom door. So my bedroom door back home where I grew up has this thing.
It's a prop replica.
Yeah. From my visit to San Francisco, like, almost 15 years ago.
That's fantastic.
I think I do envy tourists. I envy that ephemeral nature of like their visit and
Yes.
the perspective they see. I know when a lot of people travel, they want to live like a local, but it never is the case, right? Like I read the online blogs and like how to live not the touristy part of town, get an Airbnb, but still it's still the facsimile of the experience, because my eyes are still kind of wide open and I'm pursuing the experience a little differently than I would be.
Well, and there's also so much of San Francisco to take in. If you're going to stay in an Airbnb in the Mission, that's one experience. Glen Park is another. Pacific Heights is another. Laurel Village. I mean, all of these different places would give you completely different impressions of the city. I talked to a Kiwi in New Zealand a few months ago who had visited San Francisco, and they had walked the length of Polk Street because the hotel they got online was on Polk. And they walked up and down Polk Street, and they were like, San Francisco is the ugliest city I've ever seen.
There are parts.
You chose a particularly rough street.
Yeah. What I also love, I guess, now that you're in San Francisco, you'll never have to go to Alcatraz. That locals never go to Alcatraz. Although you do. That's the
the
point.
Thing is
you
that you take your relatives there because Alcatraz is no joke, a legit amazing experience.
Yeah.
I still haven't been. I've been to some of the less touristy places because I have family around here, but I haven't been to Alcatraz.
My point is, now that you're here, don't take it for granted, because so many locals do.
When I lived in New York, I used to go to the Empire State Building about once every year.
Really?
Because it's astounding. It's totally an amazing experience, and it's worth doing. So I'm a fan of the in-home tourism.
Yes. And also, one of the things I love to do is just look back at what the city was like then 10 years ago, 20 years ago, which is something as a tourist I never think about doing. I think about the city as it is today. But if you're going to be a local, a nice new way to explore the city you're in, whether it's San Francisco or wherever it is to find what it looked like in the movies.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what was the one that sticks out to me the most is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
Oh, okay.
With Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy. It's about their daughter bringing home a black man for dinner, but they live up at the top of Lombard.
Is that Sidney Poitier?
Yes, Sidney Poitier. And they live up at the top of Lombard, and there's all these scenes of the movie take place on Lombard up there, on Mel's Drive-In and all these locations. There's driving, people complaining, getting into accidents.
Yep. Same with Bullet. Bullet is a great San Francisco movie. And Vertigo is the other one.
Vertigo, a classic. The Mission Dolores features heavily in Vertigo.
Wow, I watched that recently on a plane. I don't know, they had Hitchcock on an airplane, but I didn't realize it was in San Francisco.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. Like
the stairs that that's the Mission Dolores.
Oh wow, that puts a totally new perspective on that movie. I'll have to go back and watch it again.
And Midge's apartment is in a fictitious building over in North Beach. There's also an entire history of fake apartments and fake buildings that aren't in San Francisco, like Sigourney Weaver's apartment in the movie Black Widow.
Okay.
It's literally at the corner of Fort Mason on the water.
There's
no housing there.
Yeah, right.
But they built a set with this unbelievable view.
Oh, so it wasn't a fake backdrop? It wasn't a matte painting?
No. They built a set out. I believe they built a set out there.
Wow, guys, I think for Midge and Vertigo, I think that is just a fake.
Yeah.
They just photographed it and put it back, but that is a unbelievable view that does not exist.
Quicksilver, the Kevin Bacon bike messenger movie, includes a bike race in Manhattan. At one point, they turn left, and all of a sudden, they're bombing down Fillmore Street. They filmed part of the bike because Manhattan has no hills.
Yeah.
There's one hill on the East 90s. I know about it. But Manhattan has no hills, and Quicksilver added some by filming in San Francisco.
That's really funny.
So one thing I want to talk about, I actually finally was able to leave the house recently. With the newborn. Very rare opportunities. But last week, I went to see my very first Cirque du Soleil.
Oh. What's this one called? Volta?
Volta, yes. And it's a touring show. Actually, one of the listeners of our other podcast, reached out. It was as a technician on the show and was able to take us backstage. And there's a tested piece coming out about it soon. But what I learned so much about this production. I know when you talked about you going on tours in general, like arena tours, stage shows, are kind of quantified. One way to quantify them is the number of trucks.
Yep, that's
Right.
that's what most people who deal with tour stuff want to know. How many trucks, and they know most of what they need to know based on that metric.
I had no idea, but I tried to guess how many trucks the show was, and then I found out. But guess how many trucks is this show?
The very top end is the last is a U2 tour, which is like 85 trucks.
What?
Yeah, it's so
Semi-trucks,
big. Semi-trucks. That was, I believe, I was told at the time it was the largest tour in history. But Cirque du Soleil's got to travel with a lot of stuff, so I think it's like more than 20. I think it's less than 50. I'm gonna say 35.
It is a 74
Oh!
truck show.
What?
I was off by a factor of 2.
Blew my mind
74 semi-trucks.
of gear.
How long is their load in?
2 weeks. No, they build up. They can pack it up in 2 days,
What?
and they can deploy and start playing in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, 14 days, 70 trucks in 14 days. That's like that's unloading 6 or 7 trucks a day.
It's
Oh my God.
mind-boggling
And
to
that's
think
not even,
about.
I can't even.
It really felt like a small city
Yeah.
gets deployed, because in San Francisco, where it plays, is in basically we don't have a fairgrounds in the city proper, so it's the parking lot of our local baseball stadium.
Oh,
Right?
yeah,
It's-
yeah.
it's
That's
local
where
park,
that's where
AT&T
they
Park.
always play.
Yes, so it's relatively large space, but typically when they travel around North America, it would be like San Mateo Fairgrounds or some
Yeah.
like big open fairgrounds area. But there are no facilities. They bring their stage,
Right.
They bring all the seats. They bring their workshop.
The
They
tent?
deploy that big tent is packed up in 2 trucks, 2 semi trucks. That giant
Wow.
tent with the 4 masts, and I think they're
Tesla coils? Do they have Tesla
no
coils?
Tesla coils.
It's
in
called
this
Volta.
one.
I
know.
assume they
I
had
know.
to have Tesla coils.
I know. Sometimes they bring their own power too, but then I think they do shore power from the city for this one, and a lot of electronic stuff. But the fact that they can pack it up in 2 days and deploy and play in New City in 2 weeks is just mind-boggling.
The logistics involved in that they beggar my imagination.
Yeah.
That's thrilling.
I'm thinking about like the 1 or 2 trucks that we have to pack up at the end of today, and thinking about that times 6 or 7 per day.
Right.
And that's I'm assuming they're spreading it out, but they might not. Maybe it's 15 trucks in a single day, and there's just someone with a walkie knowing where everything is.
And all the trucks become the walls of the city.
Oh.
Right, the containers don't leave because they all stay there, and they're all numbered and becomes referenced. So one of the things we learned is they build out, like, there's the big tent, and they build out a technical tent, which is their workshop. It becomes like their maker space, and that is all out of 1 truck, the number 54. And every tour, because they have 3 or 4 of these touring shows that go around the world, the 54 truck is always the workshop in every single city.
Is
It's
that
just the way.
superstition or just
I think it's the way they account for it. So when whatever logistics person they refer to, like, where is our 54? Where's the 54 in Japan right now? Oh, it's on this boat or on this airplane coming in, and it's so that the institutional knowledge they have for deploying these things can be retained.
I mean, on our measly little 2-truck tour that Jamie and I did, and then later Michael Stevens and I did, you could run into all sorts of weird problems. At one point, I got locked in the bus because the bus's pneumatic system broke and the door wouldn't open. I had to climb out this little driver's window. Another time, we had snow in eastern Washington. Our trucks didn't get in until 5 p.m., and we still managed to make our 8 p.m. show
Wow.
because the crew is amazing. But that's 2 trucks.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember being surprised once that FedEx, in its logistics planning, is effectively one of the world's most advanced weather stations.
Yes. Right.
That all of their energy in logistics is based on knowing precisely what the weather is and what it's likely to be.
Huh.
And I hadn't considered that, but I'll bet that Cirque du Soleil, I bet that with 74 trucks, you got to have a very granular understanding of the roads everywhere you go and the potential conditions you're going to encounter.
And when you're erecting a giant tent for 2,000 people, the 4 masts that sits on one is for weather. Like, they can detect, they know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they that will be pulled to attract lightning if there's a storm. They know the tolerances for the tent, right? And they'll cancel shows if need be. We had a
Amazing.
big storm, I think 2 weeks ago in San Francisco, and I think that is taken into consideration.
The amount of technical wizardry involved in any Cirque du Soleil show is mind-blowing, let alone a touring one.
Well, I think that's the thing that surprised me the most, because I really only knew about the show from, and most people in America probably know about the show from, it's the residencies in Vegas.
Yeah.
Right? And there was definitely an assumption of what Cirque du Soleil is. Oh, it's a thing you do in Vegas. It's the fancy, very French-Canadian show thing. And it is that, but it's also like the biggest production company in the world.
Oh. I saw, back in the 90s, my then wife and I went and saw them fairly frequently. I think we saw them 4 or 5 times at that same location down by the new ballpark. And I always found the shows transformative. I mean, I was always in tears by the end of the first act. For some reason, I think I always thought the first acts were more moving than the second acts. Maybe it's just because the visual spectacle was so surprising. So many things you don't expect to, like, how is that possible?
Right.
Or, I'm really glad these gymnasts have work.
Yeah, and the way the shows are constructed, just I haven't been able to finally watch one.
Yeah.
Because you have this, I've seen it in movies. You see, like, oh, there's the one with the water. It's almost like a magic show in that there's a repertoire of
very
acts,
much.
right? And you think there's when they construct the show, because they construct them every couple of years, they look at, well, what are the acts that can fit in this show and who is available? Because you're not going to, like, when you say you want the world-class, straps person or rings person or whatever it is, like, there's only so many, one, if they're available, and then how do you incorporate what they do into something that is cohesive as a theme and has somewhat of a narrative, because they all have like a narrative that goes through them, and then design something visually striking.
So speaking of this, I would like to. So Jen is working on this new production in a specific capacity, and part of our cohort is John Marcoux, who's one of the lead builders on Mythbusters Jr. John Marcoux has worked on all of the American Beastmaster and American Ninja Warrior shows.
Really? I didn't know that about him.
And I want to bring him on the podcast because he was telling me some amazing stories about how those sets are constructed, about how that's built, how they're tested, how they're executed, how they're filmed. It's a really, really fascinating world to look into because, again, American Ninja Warrior is very franchised, and they can build that thing in many different places, and it has all these different configurations they can achieve. It's totally fascinating. Again, the logistics of that scale of construction and execution and performance, just it blows my mind. I'm really thrilled by it.
I never thought of that way, but it is like a touring show almost because they have to move from city to city, and it is the same kind of layout, and they have it in these kind of parking lots with an audience.
Well, and apparently one of the shows that he worked on, I can't remember which one, was they were filming 6 different international versions of the show at once. They had 6 different pairs of hosts in different languages.
What?
What did signage? Signage, I assume.
I'm not sure exactly how you would. So look, when you develop a TV show, one of the things that everyone hopes for is that your show gets syndicated. That's mostly in network television because you can make residuals. Another thing is to franchise your show. So Ricky Gervais came up with The Office in England. It ran in the United States, but it also runs in 8 or 9 other countries. And Ricky gets paid an executive producer fee for every single episode in every single one of those countries. This is like how people like Dick Wolf have unbelievable gobs of money.
Right.
And when you develop a game show like Ninja Warrior, you want to be able to put it up in other countries. Apparently, they're now not waiting. They're just setting it up in one place and bringing in other countries of competitors and filming all at once.
Oh, so it's not even the localization just for the presentation, the hosting. Even the competitors are different.
I'm not sure exactly about that.
I would believe
but
that
they're franchising from a single location in a single place.
It's like weird concept.
I know. No, look, I could be totally wrong about all this, but it sounds totally incredible. We got to have John Marcoux on the podcast, and we'll ask him all about it.
It's the American...
And he'll say, "I wasn't allowed to talk about it. I signed an NDA. You screwed me, savage."
It's like there was a documentary about Everybody Loves Raymond, but the Russian version, right? Like,
what?
It's like they have the exact same show, except now it's done with Russian actors because the comedy still works, but it's localized that way. They just redo it.
A lot of sitcoms are done this way.
So same script and everything. They just act it with different people in another language.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want the awkward American version, watch the very first episode of The American Office, because it is the same script as the first episode of The British Office, and it doesn't work.
Right.
Huh.
Right.
It's just bizarre.
The humor doesn't transfer?
What's that?
The humor doesn't transfer?
It does, but it does, but I mean, The American Office ended up working because it found its own voice.
Right. The Jim Halpert, right? The character. I think the guy was hired because he could do the expressions that Martin Freeman could do, looking at the camera. They did his hair exactly the same, but then it really became, John Krasinski came into his own, right? And that's why Americans love the American version.
Yeah,
it's very different. Yeah, I think you're right. The type of humor, there's some stuff that plays overseas, maybe harder to watch here.
It could be.
Yeah. One last anecdote about the Cirque du Soleil stuff, because now having done this, it's fresh in my mind, and there's a fantasy camp that it's going to be on our radar somewhere in the future, but in their home offices in Quebec, in Montreal, what they have is a library of every single piece of costuming that they've made for every show since they've been performing since the 80s.
Wow.
And because they make all their own fabric.
What?
They dye their own fabric and they screen print everything themselves because they can't trust that the suppliers for their textiles will have the same colors and can color match when they need to revive something or repair something, a decade later. And so they have...
That is a lot of foresight.
Samples and reference. So when they're designing a new show, and what show we had back
Let's bring
2
in the
decades
sprinkle
ago
costumes from the fairy sequence.
Had the feathers or these sparkly bits, and they can open up a binder and pull out from a drawer the sample fabric, and that would be quite a place to visit.
Amazing.
So
everything about it sounds fascinating.
Hey everybody, Norm here. Before we continue on with this episode, I want you to know that this episode of Still Untitled is made possible by the podcast Hackable. Have you ever wondered if Siri and Alexa are listening to you, or if hackers can watch your webcam? Cybercrime is all over the news and in popular media like TV shows like Mr. Robot or Black Mirror, featuring cybercriminals lurking in the shadows. But how worried should you really be? And can hackers actually infiltrate your daily life with a couple of keystrokes? Hackable, an original podcast from McAfee, answers the simple question, is it hackable? Each week, host Jeff Siskin invites white hat hackers to try to hack a different device or technology. Past episodes have tested webcams, smart speakers, car key fobs, pet cams, smart doorbells, and more. In one episode, Jeff was even trapped in an internet-connected car wash when a show-friendly hacker locks the doors. Season 3 just launched and will investigate whether VR headsets, drones, and more are hackable. Now listen and subscribe to Hackable on all major podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you're listening right now, and thank them for making this episode possible. Back to the conversation.
You are in the neighborhood, as it were, Jen. Have you partaken of any local cuisine?
I've eaten a lot of burritos.
Have you been spreading the burrito love about to get to everyone has to have a favorite burrito? It's kind of required here.
I've just been going to the place that's really close by, that's like walking distance from my house. Because we're in production, time is very limited, so I get what's convenient. Yeah. But I'm open to recommendations for what I should check out.
We will give you recommendations.
Yeah, I love the salsa at Papalote on 24th in Valencia, and their grilled quesadilla is a phenomenal meal.
El Farolito.
The burritos and the green salsa, the tomatilla salsa verde at El Farolito is just the best.
I'll check that out. I did get dim sum last weekend off of, I'm trying to think of, like 24th Street, and I've wandered around Valencia a little bit. There's so much good food here.
Shizen vegan sushi on 14th and Valencia. Shizen. It will rock your world.
Really?
Vegan sushi, the idea does not appeal to me.
Yeah.
However, if I served this to you and I did not tell you, after like 10 minutes you go, what is this? Because it'd be like, this is delicious sushi. And yet everything, it's just, it tells you that what sushi is about is not about the fish; it's about the texture in each bite and the flavor profile of the umami and the sweet and the sour and the acid in each bite. And Shizen is world-class sushi that just happens to not have fish.
Yeah, I definitely want to look into that. People have been telling me about it, but I haven't had an opportunity to be like, oh, let me go get vegan sushi.
Well, here's the best part is when you eat a full meal of it and you're like stuffed, you don't feel awful.
Yeah.
There's a way about eating vegetarian food that you can stuff yourself till I can't eat anymore and you don't hate yourself.
Yeah.
And you know you've had your greens and your fiber for the day, so you'll be happy eight hours
virtuous.
later. I cannot abide.
You got to try it.
I'll try it.
You got to try it.
Yeah.
I bought Mission Chinese for the crew yesterday for lunch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you've had Mission Chinese now.
Well, yeah, I have.
Okay.
I didn't know that's what it was, but it
Yeah.
was delicious.
Yes.
It's like super spicy. A couple of people on the crew were having a little trouble with the spice that makes your face numb.
Yeah. Their chicken wings. It's a numbing. It's a Szechuan pepper. I want to say that is
so
yeah.
good.
Yeah. I want to sprinkle that on popcorn if you can buy that.
Really?
That pepper. Yeah. That's really good.
Oh, that's fabulous. Jen, have you been watching any? Have you been imbibing any media lately? I know we've been working really hard, but
I just started reading the Kindle version of The Right Stuff, which I was telling you about the other day. I hadn't had a chance to read it. A friend got it for me for Christmas, and it is like I can't put it down. It's riveting. Have you ever read it?
I haven't read it.
I
No.
am ashamed to say I have not read it.
It's Tom Wolfe.
Tom Wolfe, yeah.
Who he's writing about what is the right stuff, what does it take to be an astronaut? Like, what do you have? What type of personality? And so it starts off talking about, because a lot of them were fighter pilots. So it starts off talking about this really intense, rigorous training that you have to go through as a fighter pilot and just how dangerous it is. And so he's talking about how they start off with a crew of like 20 people, this particular regiment, and just in training, they're not even in combat, just in training, it is so dangerous. Like if you make one little mistake, one little thing happens, and the crew whittles down to about 8 people, and they keep going to funerals over and over again. And it's just like, you're immediately invested, and it's like thrilling. And I haven't even gotten to the part about the astronauts yet, but I highly recommend it.
Wow.
So
Chuck
obviously,
Yeager was on Twitter yesterday trashing Richard Feynman. Not trashing, but kind of throwing shade on Richard Feynman.
it's weird to see that tangential. It's weird to see people who you idolize or read about growing up on mediums like Twitter actively.
That's far out.
Like Tom Brokaw on Twitter.
Yeah.
Kind of weird. Yeah. and using the parlance. Yeah. But as a recommendation, obviously, Right Stuff, the biopic, the adaptation, the film adaptation, I guess not.
by Taylor Hackford, which is an amazing,
wonderful watch. There's also a complimentary documentary. It's on Netflix called The Mercury 13. About the women who were
trained alongside,
who didn't get to train alongside, but who went through the same, I guess they were all fighter pilot, or if not fighter pilots, but all pilots as well in the war. But there was experiments to see where they could go. They went through the same testing
Am I
process.
right that they were pulled from the program because NASA didn't like the optics of women?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it went to Congress, and they testified, and the very men in the Mercury program testified against them, and
Really?
said, yeah.
So this is when you read Nicolas de Monchaux's book Spacesuit, about the development of the spacesuit. He talks about Wolf helping to create a mythos of the perfect physical specimen.
Yeah, it's very. The book is very. I mean, so far, it has a very patriarchal perspective, and you
Shocking.
you have to take it for what it's worth. But it is really excellent read.
I read a lovely review of First Man the other day, talking about that it's a shame First Man didn't get any Oscar love, because this is such a terrific movie. But then they pointed out that it fits perfectly between the movies The Right Stuff and Apollo 13, and I thought that would be a really great triple feature to enjoy.
That'd be 7 hours.
Yeah, it would be, but you'd be getting this incredible scope of the American space program.
Yeah.
Across all that, and then you follow it with Space Cowboys.
Yeah,
Armageddon.
yeah, or like Interstellar.
That's the
Talk
kind of
about the
sad
wrong
part,
stuff.
right? Where like you end with 13, and I mean there aren't many movies about Apollo programs these days.
You could watch From the Earth to the Moon, the documentary series.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. But in terms of dramatic portrayals, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I speaking back to the space program, I I agree that it's sad that First Man didn't get any Oscar love. I don't know if you saw it.
I haven't seen it yet.
Really a uniquely different film than The Right Stuff or Apollo 13. It's a much more internal film, and it deals much more with the emotional aspects of the partnership between Neil and his wife, who's an amazing character played by Claire Foy, and also it's the one film that really communicates how rickety a lot of the stuff they were doing was, how tiny those capsules were and how touch and go it was.
I think Hollywood Reporter just did a small video story on Ryan Nagata's costume.
Oh,
the
yes.
X-15 suit.
Oh,
So
fabulous.
I'm glad the costuming is getting some recognition, at least, even though not on the Oscars. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen First Man. For the same reasons you're talking about, I really enjoyed Interstellar because it's a movie about the human condition and just happens to have this backdrop of space travel. But it's a space movie, but it's not just a movie about space.
Yeah, I agree. It's actually I have huge issues with Interstellar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in execution, but it's the central plot idea, which is that love could somehow have a quantum dimension. I love that idea. That's thrilling to me. I have no problem buying that.
That's science fiction, right?
Yeah.
That's good storytelling.
Oh, do you know? Sorry. So there's this huge Chinese science fiction movie that's coming out, The Wandering Earth.
Okay.
It's gigantic. It's been touted in the review, and the trailer I saw is maybe the biggest Chinese-produced sci-fi epic yet. It looks stunning. But it turns out that they filmed a film of the three-body problem that they never released.
Yeah,
I didn't know about that.
I think I've seen from the trailers of like kind of teaser trailers of that.
Yeah.
In China, but it's not
not making the rounds.
No.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I think the book was so successful. Like some company did just made their own film version, but I don't think it's the one we want. I don't think that movie that book adapts well.
Giant sprawling novels like that it's very difficult to boil them into a couple of hours or even 3 or 4 hours.
Very heady concepts.
I mean, that's the short story is the perfect nugget to adapt into a feature film. But back to Interstellar. I agree. I love the idea of these films that have more reach than just wasn't this one thing we're covering really amazing.
Yeah. Other awards movies, one thing I did get to see, Destroyer, which is Nicole Kidman.
Right.
Kind of gritty cop revenge movie. It reminded me a lot of Memento.
Oh.
In that they play a little bit with time, and it's in 2 time periods, so a little bit True Detective, but Nicole Kidman in a role you've never seen her before.
I love her.
Intense role.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it super violent?
There's some parts that squeamish parts in it.
Women that is really off.
There's a little bit of stuff that's tough to watch.
I can't take that shit.
Yeah, but she's in prosthetic makeup and she becomes this whole character that does not look like Nicole Kidman.
Wow.
At all.
I love her in The Hours.
Yeah.
I watched the Roger Stone film.
Oh, timely. Yes.
Get Me Roger Stone.
Yes,
on Netflix.
it's on Netflix. Yeah.
It's there.
There's a resolution. I guess. Happening in real time.
Not in the,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
He's almost a comic villain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of an amazing character. There's nothing to admire. For my money, there's nothing to admire about his output. He's the inventor of the super PAC. He is the first person to use negative advertising in a campaign. I mean, even if he's lying about that, the fact that you'd consider that a lie worth telling.
Isn't that? Would it be a good pairing with The Candidate?
The Robert Redford film.
No. Or The Frontrunner. Sorry.
The Frontrunner.
Would it be?
No, The Frontrunner would kick it down the stairs and take its lunch money.
Okay.
The Frontrunner's phenomenal political. So actually, the Frontrunner definitely is of a piece of the Robert Redford film, The Candidate, written by Jeremy Larner. Both terrific films about American politics. The Candidate is fictional, starring Robert Redford. The Frontrunner with Hugh Jackman is. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
It's so good. It's about the Gary Hart implosion, the Gary Hart presidential implosion.
So those would be good pairing.
Yeah, totally wonderful pairing.
You guys have lots of movie nights lined up.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get to them. I'm not going to get to them until we do another unauthorized commentary. That's probably the next.
It's just more fun thinking about them, putting them on paper.
It's also like we like parsing weird film festivals. Like John Hodgman pointed out that there's an entire film genre of let's mess with Bill Pullman's mind.
Yes.
While you were sleeping, Serpent and the Rainbow, Mulholland Drive, not Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway. There's this whole class of films. Let's mess with Bill Pullman's mind.
I would even call Casper put that in that category as well, or Independence Day, because literally mess with his mind there.
Exactly.
Very good. Awesome.
I think that's a reasonable place to stop.
Yes.
Jen and I got to go get some coffee and get to work.
Same here. Thank you guys. Thank you, Jen, so much for coming in this early, and welcome to San Francisco.
Yes, welcome.
Hope to have you in the podcast in the future.
We'd love to see some of your local cuisine recommendations in the comments for Jen to enjoy.
Yeah, and tell us about if you live. It doesn't matter if you live in San Francisco or not. I want to hear about the films about your cities that you love. Because old films about cities you live in, and because. Next time I go, I will watch those films before visiting the city.
When you go to Cleveland, people love pointing out where they did all the Avengers filming.
Yes. Yes. Or Atlanta, I guess.
Exactly.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot. I'll see everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.
See ya.
Thanks for listening this week. And once again, I want to let you know that this episode was made possible by the podcast Hackable. Cybercrime has been all over TV and news and popular media, and Hackable, an original podcast from McAfee, answers the question, how worried should I really be about hackers? In each episode, host Jeff Siskin invites a hacker to try to hack a device he's using. It's kind of like what you see on Mr. Robot. In Season 3, Jeff straps on a virtual reality headset, puts his laptop password on the line, investigates drones, and more. Listen to Hackable on all major podcast platforms and thank them for sponsoring this week's episode. We'll see you next week.